There was a time when our hair was not as white as it is, when we first heard from R.T. Ryback that all I ever wanted to do was to become mayor of Minneapolis. As our hair whitened and he said it more often, we took him more seriously. And in due course, he achieved his lifelong dream. And those of us in Minneapolis are very fortunate that he did so. He brings in style and substance a progressive, innovative, and energetic program that has made Minneapolis a much better place to live. Thank you for your kind words. Today is our 1-month anniversary of returning home. And during that time, we have seen so many friends, so many wonderful people who have not been part of our lives for 3.5 years. It's been very touching. It has been very warm. It has been very welcoming. And tonight, especially so. I was watching the program and listening to what people said, and I realized Sylvia and I know better than you who you are. For you see, we have been away so long, we bring the objectivity that you don't have. And I can tell you, you are a very, very special breed. We come from a part of the world that has discovered the notion of NGOs. And NGOs proliferate in abundance, and they never, ever work together. And what you have here is this unique, this extraordinary thing where you've come together, this large group and all of your volunteers, and together you perform what you believe and we believe to be the message of promoting human rights. I'm very impressed, and I know you are too. When you're the ambassador to a country appointed by the president, you're the president's personal representative. It's an honor, it's a thrill, and it has been that exactly for us. Morocco has been a welcoming country. Our experience there has been satisfying. It has been thrilling. It has also been complicated and sometimes mystifying. But it has been a very, very unusual one for us that we will never forget. It's important to remember that in December of 1777, Morocco was the first country in the world to recognize the sovereignty of the United States. And 10 years later, in 1787, Morocco entered into a friendship and peace treaty with the United States. It is the longest continuing treaty in American history, and it's still in effect today. Now, much of what is in that treaty isn't very relevant today, except the concept of friendship. And we came to understand that that's what Morocco is about. It welcomes you into its country. Unlike other countries of the world where you have uprisings and revolution, Morocco is a country that reveres its king and believes in stability. And so we have seen that Morocco is one of our great friends. We have seen that they're going through a reform process, not always perfect, indeed a long ways from perfect. But they're trying to move forward. There are challenges in broadening the middle class, and there are challenges in dealing with the issues of education. But I think it is a country that is on the move. But that's not why you asked us here to speak tonight. You wanted us to talk about the process of dealing with human rights in Morocco and other countries of North Africa. And you wanted us to tell you how it is through the prism of the diplomatic process. You see, it's altogether different from what you're doing every day in this organization. We in the diplomatic corps always cared about promoting human rights, but we did it in a way totally different from how you do it. It would be inappropriate to say we were partners in the process, but I think we can say with real understanding that you and we were on the same road, albeit traveling in different vehicles. You see, the whole concept of the diplomatic corps is that one must carefully distinguish that which is for the country an internal matter as to which we are not permitted to publicly speak. So much of what we did was to deal in private with the issues of human rights. Your program is predicated on a belief that by bringing human rights violations to the attention of the world, working in collaboration with other NGOs in partnership to fulfill your goals, that this will be the approach to be taken. Our approach was different. We could speak privately to the leadership of the country, and we could talk about the issues of human rights that we thought needed to be attended to. Now, there are 3 times during the course of the time we were there that we did speak publicly, and all of them are interesting. One of them was the annual time that we come out with the Human Rights Report. Congress has mandated that the State Department issue a human rights report relating to every country. And we do that. But we do that after we have met intensively and privately with the leadership of the country. We do not shame them. We do not embarrass them. We ask them what steps they can take to improve the situation so that we may say in the report that progress is being made. And secondly, we have the same collaborative approach as we deal with the trafficking in persons. Our good friend, Ambassador at Large Louis Sidibaka for trafficking in persons, comes to Morocco, and we sit with the Moroccan leadership and we deal with the issues before them. We will ultimately come out with reports that they don't like, and the reports will be public, but they will have been heard, and they will be heard in a respectful manner. And the third point is altogether different. You see, my responsibility as an ambassador was to broaden the bilateral relationship between our countries. But I had another responsibility that will be obvious to you, but is spoken about only infrequently, and that is to protect the interests of Americans in Morocco. In March of 2010, the Moroccan government expelled a number of Americans for violating their law against proselytizing. It was very hard for us to interpret exactly what they had done because it's a francophone system, and that system is not one that we readily understand. But what was clear to me is that the process, once they were determined to be guilty, denied them due process, and that they were not given the opportunity to appeal, they were not being given an opportunity to put their affairs in order. That was the first time, and indeed one of the only times, that I spoke out in public and I asked the newspapers to write what I had said, which is that due process had been denied. The newspapers were inflamed and said I had crossed over the diplomatic line. They were wrong. We were right. Shortly after that, we learned that they proposed to expel additional people. And at that time, I went to see the Minister of Interior and I said, if you do this, this will severely damage the relationship with the United States beyond what you would contemplate. And they suspended it, they didn't do it, and they haven't done it again since. Now the question is, when we meet in private, when we talk about these things, what is it that we talk about? And now I shall say something that will trouble some of you. We use a word that many of you find deeply troubling. We talk about comparatives. Because you see, your program here does not contemplate comparatives. We contemplate comparatives. What do I mean? We talk about how they have improved compared to what they did last year. We talk about how they are different from other countries in the area and how they have improved in that respect. I know that you believe that there is an international human rights standard that should be applied at all times. For those of us who were working in this, our goal was to achieve movement. Movement was important to us. And the third and truly the most troubling piece of this is the comparative to America process. It's not easy. It's not easy. The people on the streets of Morocco are very upset with America because of the position that America has taken with regard to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But the people who are the leaders of the country do not speak of that because they know of the generosity of America to the Palestinian territories, and they know it is not America that is directing the affairs of the countries there. But they do talk about Guantanamo. And when we meet with them and we talk about how they may be holding people through inappropriate detention, they talk about Guantanamo. You need to understand how important Guantanamo has become since the United States declared that there are 88 men there who have been cleared and should be released but haven't been released. Guantanamo was a symbol, but it was not a symbol that was so meaningful to them until they said America was holding people who should be released. Very harmful to the process. And when we met face to face, we were constantly being told, how can you explain this? And you should not assume that people in these countries are not informed. I had fairly recently a conversation with the Minister of Communication. And he said, explain something to me. He said, it is against the law in America to have child pornography in your possession. He said, I understand that. Children are a protected class. And if you create child pornography and people buy it, that only encourages this terrible thing. But where we are from, religion is the most compelling thing in our lives. And when you allow Qurans to be burned, or people to put on vile videos such as you saw from California, isn't that violating some protective class that America, that was founded on the basis of religious freedom, has? And of course, then we have a conversation and we speak about how deeply committed we are to freedom of expression and that this falls into the category. But people should not assume that people do not understand America, because they do. Do I understand Morocco? I think so. I'm not entirely sure. These are wonderful people, but there are people who puzzle me from time to time. This country was a country that was a lower income country for the longest possible time. Now it is a lower middle income country. That boost upward changes the entire way in which it is seen in the scheme of things. I feel pretty good about it. I think changes are being made. But now I'll give you another point of view.
Thank you. I am very happy to be here and share the podium with the former ambassador to Morocco. I always tell people that my husband was really born to be a diplomat, born to be an ambassador. I am not a diplomat, but I am an advocate, so I am very comfortable to be here with you tonight, although I don't like it that I can't see anybody's faces. That's very disconcerting for me. But what I want to talk about tonight is just the drama of transformative talk, because our time in Morocco, it was a long time, but it was a short time, and it is a very old country and it has old traditions. And things do not change easily. Moroccans are much more resistant to change than are Americans. I think the wonderful thing about America, the wonderful thing about this group who's here tonight is that we believe we can fix things, that we can change things, and we can make things better. And Moroccans are not so sure. I always use it as an example when I talk about Morocco, the food, because everybody knows I'm interested in food. And so we got there, and they haven't changed the food in hundreds of years. There is a restaurant, by the way, in San Francisco, a wonderful restaurant that we love, and that's a modern Moroccan restaurant. And Murad has written a wonderful cookbook. I'll give you the name of it if you ask me. Email me, and that's a great restaurant. It's on 23rd and Geary. But in Morocco, the food doesn't change. During Ramadan, people have harara soup every night to break the fast for the iftar. And one night we were going to have a bunch of actually very observant Moroccans for a iftar celebration. And I said to the chef, let's make a different kind of soup. And he said, no, everybody would be offended. So you don't get to do that. So I just think that food and talk are kind of central to what I did in my experience in Morocco. We felt it was very important when we got there to try to figure out what was going on. And Sam would go to the embassy every day, and he would be briefed by the CIA and the FBI, and you have no idea how much anti-terrorist stuff is going on in this world, and that's where the government is spending all their money. And so I wouldn't get to do that, but what I did get to do is I accompanied Sam, and this was unusual in the diplomatic world. It really doesn't happen very often, to everything else, everything that wasn't top security, where I was explicitly excluded, and we would meet with the Peace Corps volunteers, and we would meet with students who were studying Arabic there, and we would meet with student groups, with Moroccans. What I learned to do, when I think this is harder for women, I learned to pause for translators. I always say that women never pause when they're talking, because they always figure that some man will interrupt and they won't ever get to finish what they're going to say. So sometimes Sam had to kick me or nudge me to say, it's time to stop and let them now translate the last 2.5 paragraphs. But and it's hard to talk for translators. What I was particularly effective at, I think, was telling my personal story, not to ministers and to other ambassadors and not to the staff at the embassy, who I'm not sure they were all so in favor of what I was doing, but to the ordinary people, to the women in those very tiny, remote communities who've never, not only not seen an ambassador, but never seen an American before, and to the students at the universities who often were protesting when we got there, but usually ended up being our friends. And I would tell them my story and how I was a community activist and working for social justice like 50 years ago, as I explained to them, and particularly for the women, to demonstrate that you didn't have to be a person of power and money and connection, and you didn't even necessarily have to start with the skills to understand that a passion for social justice is important, but that you have to convince other people and you have to get other people to join you. And so Sam and I spoke together, and that was almost as important as anything that we said in particular, because when they see a woman standing up with her husband and even, like interrupting him or disagreeing with him. Disagreeing, and they said, oh God, you get to disagree. So this was nice. And then afterwards, they would come up to me, and they were also impressed that I had 13 grandchildren, that I cooked my own food. And the fact that I remember one woman, and she said, we just admire you so much because you're so plain. She says, you're not like those other ambassadors' wives with all the jewelry and stuff. So it was just a great opportunity for me, and as much as I'm sure they learned from me, I learned so much listening to them. When I told you about the Peace Corps volunteers, they were so important because, they spend 6 months studying the language, and then they go live in Berber or Arab villages, and they're really embedded, and they are the ones who can come back and tell us what the world is like out there, what people watch on television, and what they say to, and how the mothers and fathers get along or don't get along. And I know we're all concerned about issues of domestic violence here, but I must tell you, when I return to Minneapolis and start reading the paper about what's going on here, they don't have any guns in Morocco. And the kinds of abuses that I've been reading about here, it's not that we weren't able to read the Arabic papers, because the amazing thing I think about living in Rabat was that I would get up in the morning and I would ask Kamel, our butler, and he would know everything that was going on. And I always wonder how, I don't think he was literate. I seriously didn't read the paper, and it wasn't on the news, but there was this amazing communication system. And so you just had to talk to the people and they will tell you what was going on. I'm not so sure that things are changing or getting to be more part of the 21st century. I think it's very hard, I would say, when people ask about the Arab Spring, to generalize. We were interviewed by a radio station shortly before we left, and they said to me, how do you feel as a woman, living in an Arab and an Islamist world? And I said, I don't know, I was living in a Moroccan world, because I think Morocco is very unique. It's not, I wouldn't generalize about an Arab country from Morocco. I think they see themselves as different, and the palace is complicated and interesting, and we don't have time to talk about that now. But I think, and there are other people here who've spent a lot of time in Morocco, and I think they would all have interesting things to say, and it would be nice to have a discussion about that now. But right now, I only want to say that I come away after 3.5 years with no clear-cut sense of how it is. It's just, people are welcoming and loving. I have never felt so connected to people who I don't get, and they don't get me. They don't necessarily share my values, but the warmth and the connection is there. And so that for me has been an important thing. And so it was a privilege.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you for listening to us. I tell you one short story and then we conclude. We had a protective detail of 10 bodyguards and drivers and armored cars. And one day I had a difference of opinion with the head of our protective detail, Mustafa. Half of them are Mustafa. And Mustafa said, "This is the way I think we should go." And I said, "Mustafa, you're the boss." And he says, "Yes, Your Excellency, but Mrs. Kaplan is the big boss."